Something just changed at Yellowstone. And when something changes at Yellowstone, the whole world should pay attention. For 9 months, the ground at Yellowstone was rising continuously, relentlessly, upward. Scientists were tracking it, measuring it, logging every millimeter. And then, just like that, it stopped. The uplift stopped. Now, some people will hear that and think, good, the pressure is gone, everything is fine. But that is not how supervolcanoes work. And that is not what the data is telling us. Because at almost exactly the same time that the uplift paused, something else happened. Black Diamond Pool exploded again. And guys, when I tell you what Black Diamond Pool is and what it means when it explodes and why the timing of this with the uplift stopping is something that scientists are watching extremely carefully right now, I think you will understand why I had to make this video today. So let me start from the beginning because you need the full picture here. Yellowstone is not a regular volcano. You already know this, but I want you to really feel the scale of what we are talking about. The Yellowstone supervolcano sits beneath a caldera that is roughly 72 kilometers long and 55 kilometers wide. That is 45 miles by 34 miles. The entire Yellowstone National Park, the geysers, the hot springs, the forests, the tourist trails, all of it sits on top of a magmatic system that extends deep into the earth. The magma chamber beneath Yellowstone contains enough material that if it erupted at full scale, it would be one of the most catastrophic geological events in human history. We are not talking about a mountain blowing its top. We are talking about a hole opening in the earth the size of a small country. The last full caldera-forming eruption at Yellowstone was 640,000 years ago. Before that, 1.3 million years ago. Before that, 2.1 million years ago. Scientists have noted that these eruptions are spaced roughly 600,000 to 700,000 years apart. We are now 640,000 years past the last one. I am not saying an eruption is coming. I want to be very precise about that. But I am saying you need to understand what you are looking at when we talk about 9 months of continuous ground uplift, followed by a sudden stop, followed by a hydrothermal explosion at Black Diamond Pool. Because these things are connected, and that connection is the real story. So let me explain what the uplift was actually telling us. Beneath Yellowstone, there is a hydrothermal system of almost incomprehensible scale. Superheated water, steam, gases, all of them circulating through fractured rock under enormous pressure. When pressure builds beneath the surface, the ground rises. The USGS Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, they track ground deformation continuously using GPS stations and satellite-based INSAR measurements. And for 9 months, their instruments recorded consistent uplift in the caldera region. 9 months of the ground pushing upward. That kind of sustained uplift is not random. Something was inflating beneath the surface, whether that was magmatic fluid movement, hydrothermal pressure buildup, or a combination of both. Something was adding volume beneath that ground and pushing it up from below, and then it stopped. Now, here is where I need you to really pay attention because this is the part that most coverage gets wrong. When uplift stops at a volcanic system, it does not automatically mean the pressure has gone away. Sometimes it means the pressure found somewhere else to go. Sometimes it means a pathway opened. Sometimes it means the system redistributed its energy. A sudden stop in deformation at a supervolcanic system is not a relief signal. It is a question mark, a very large question mark that scientists scramble to answer. And right now, that question mark is sitting right next to Black Diamond Pool. Black Diamond Pool is one of Yellowstone's most visually striking hydrothermal features. It sits in the Biscuit Basin area of the park, deep blue water, dark edges, extraordinarily hot, and it has a history that not enough people know about. In 2024, Biscuit Basin experienced a significant hydrothermal explosion. The explosion damaged boardwalks, threw debris across a wide area, and dramatically altered the appearance of several nearby features. That was alarming enough on its own. But what matters now is that Black Diamond Pool has shown renewed explosive activity again. Another explosion, another violent release from the hydrothermal system. And it happened as the 9 months of uplift came to a stop. Guys, I have to say, when I lined up these two pieces of data side by side, I had to sit with it for a moment because the timing here is not something you can easily dismiss. Let me explain the mechanics of what a hydrothermal explosion actually is, because I think people confuse this with a volcanic eruption, and they are different things. But that does not make them harmless. A hydrothermal explosion happens when superheated water beneath the surface suddenly flashes to steam. Water at great depth can exist in liquid form even at temperatures far above the normal boiling point because the pressure of the rock above it keeps it liquid. But if that pressure drops suddenly, if a crack opens, if a pathway to the surface forms, that superheated water flashes to steam instantaneously. The expansion is violent. The steam and water and rock above it get blasted outward. The crater that forms can be enormous. The debris field can extend hundreds of meters, and the speed of it happening gives almost no warning. The USGS has documented that Yellowstone has produced some of the largest hydrothermal explosion craters on Earth. Mary Bay, which is now submerged under Yellowstone Lake, was formed by a hydrothermal explosion roughly 13,800 years ago. That crater is about 2.6 kilometers across. That is 1.6 miles wide. From a hydrothermal explosion, not a magmatic eruption, just water flashing to steam. So when Black Diamond Pool explodes, even if it is a smaller event, it is a direct window into the pressure state of the hydrothermal system beneath the surface. It is the system venting. And when the system vents at the same moment that 9 months of ground uplift suddenly stops, the scientific interpretation of that timing matters enormously. One possibility is that the uplift stopped because the hydrothermal system found a release valve. The explosion at Black Diamond Pool and the associated activity around Biscuit Basin may have provided exactly that. Pressure that was building beneath the surface, pressure that was pushing the ground upward for 9 months, found a path out, and that path was a violent explosive release at the surface. If that is what happened, the system released pressure. That would be a relatively less alarming interpretation. But there is another possibility. The uplift stopped not because the pressure released, but because the source of the inflation shifted, because the system reorganized, because whatever was driving that 9 months of ground rise is now doing something different rather than something finished. And that second possibility is what scientists are working to determine right now. I did research on the recent USGS monitoring reports and the data from the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory. The observatory tracks seismicity, ground deformation, hydrothermal activity, and gas emissions continuously. And what the recent pattern shows is that Yellowstone has been in a heightened state of hydrothermal unrest. The geyser activity in the park has been irregular. Some features that had been dormant or quiet have shown renewed activity. Steamboat Geyser, which is the world's tallest active geyser, had a remarkable eruption sequence in previous years that caught widespread scientific attention. The overall thermal output of the system has been fluctuating. And through all of this, for 9 months, the ground was rising. Now it has stopped, and a pool exploded. I want to talk about the earthquake activity at Yellowstone as well, because seismicity is another critical monitoring parameter, and it ties directly into this picture. Yellowstone experiences thousands of small earthquakes every year. That is normal for a system this active. But scientists watch for changes in the pattern. Are swarms increasing in frequency? Are depths changing? Are earthquakes clustering in new areas? Because at Yellowstone, earthquake swarms are often directly linked to hydrothermal fluid movement. The same fluids that cause ground uplift, the same pressure that drives hydrothermal explosions, also causes earthquakes as it forces its way through cracks in the rock. So when you have 9 months of uplift and then an explosion, and then the uplift stops, the earthquake record in between all of that tells you a story about where the fluids were moving and how the system was responding. The USGS has been transparent about the fact that while Yellowstone remains at normal background activity levels in terms of official alert status, the recent hydrothermal events in the Biscuit Basin area represent the most significant surface disruption the park has seen in years. Boardwalks were destroyed, new craters formed, the landscape changed overnight. That is not nothing. That is the earth rewriting itself while people were standing nearby. And for visitors to Yellowstone, that is a sobering thought. Millions of people walk those boardwalks every year. They stand meters away from features like Black Diamond Pool. They photograph the hot springs. They watch the geysers. And beneath their feet, the most thermally energetic patch of ground on the North American continent is doing something that even the scientists monitoring it 24 hours a day are still working to fully understand. Can you really feel safe standing on that ground? That is not a rhetorical question. That is the honest reality of visiting a supervolcanic system in a state of active hydrothermal unrest. Now, what should we be watching going forward? This is what matters most in the coming weeks. Does the ground start rising again? If the uplift resumes after this pause, that tells you the source of inflation is still active. It found a temporary release, but the engine is still running. If the ground stays flat or begins to subside slowly, that suggests the pressure cycle may be easing. But if the uplift resumes faster than before, that would be a signal that demands immediate attention from the monitoring community. Does Black Diamond Pool or any other feature in Biscuit Basin show further explosive activity? A second explosion or a sequence of explosions would tell you the hydrothermal system is in a sustained state of instability rather than a single release event. What do the gas measurements show? Carbon dioxide and helium isotope ratios at Yellowstone are direct indicators of magmatic versus hydrothermal fluid sources. If the gas signature shifts toward a more magmatic composition, that changes the entire interpretation of what is driving this unrest. And what happens to the earthquake patterns? If seismicity starts migrating, if swarms begin appearing in new parts of the caldera, that movement would tell scientists something important about where fluids are going and what structures they are interacting with underground. Yellowstone is the most monitored volcanic system in the United States. The USGS Yellowstone Volcano Observatory has more instruments, more sensors, more redundancy in its monitoring network than almost any other volcanic system on Earth. And right now, every single one of those instruments is pointed at a system that spent 9 months pushing the ground upward and then stopped at the same moment a hydrothermal pool exploded. Guys, I have been following volcanic and geological events for a long time, and I have to say, the convergence of signals at Yellowstone right now is the kind of thing that keeps volcanologists staring at their screens late at night. This is not panic. This is not doomsday. This is data, and the data is saying something is happening inside that system right now, and we need to watch it very carefully because Yellowstone does not send polite warnings. It sends hydrothermal explosions and 9 months of rising ground, and right now it has sent both. Stay informed, stay aware, watch the monitoring data. And if you are planning a visit to Yellowstone, stay on the boardwalks, stay behind the barriers, because the ground there is not just ground, it is the roof of something ancient and enormous and very much alive. I will stay on the pulse of this for you guys. Everything is developing. Check the end screen for more. Stay safe. Be aware. Bye-bye.